Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway. Welcome back, guys. We're so happy to have you here. And today we are talking about the painting, The Wrath of the Medusa. Now, you may have seen this in a book, you may have seen it in person, but Claudine's going to give us all the fun facts about this beautiful painting.
Yeah, this is definitely a painting that I love in the Louvre and one I love to share the story with. And I think that as I share the story, it just gets longer and longer because I keep finding out more information about it. But what I do love about the Louvre, I just had a call with a client today about a tour of the Louvre. And they were like, well, and do you also share like the history, the art history? And what I love about the paintings is, it's not really the specific technical things. Like I've never been trained in, going to art school. But what I love about it is the story in the painting, the story of the artist. Like this painting, this was a real actual event that happened. And then by the end of it, it's a really fascinating story. But that's what I love about the art in the Louvre and the Orsay and everywhere. It's the story of the painting itself, what it's depicting, and the artist, and maybe even the collector, that really makes it come alive.
Definitely. Knowing this history makes everything so much more interesting.
It is. It's so much more fun. So this is a huge painting that's in the Dunant wing. So the Dunant wing of the Louvre is where all the big stuff is. That is where the Mona Lisa is. It's where Wing Victory, Venus, de Milo, all of the big things. So there is a room called the Salle Mollien. It's on the first floor of the Dunant wing, and that is that part of the building was created in the 19th century by Napoleon III when he doubled the size of the Louvre, which we talked about a couple months ago. And so this room is the large-scale French paintings of the school of Delacroix. Again, there's my guy, but it's the Romantic period. So there's the opposite room through the Salon Dunant is the Neoclassical and School of David. And so this is what comes after that. And so the Romantic period really inspired the Impressionists. And because it's romantic, which we've also done a whole episode about, it's not just about love, it's also about feeling. So with this one, it's not really about love when I tell you what happened, but it is definitely about feelings.
Lots of feelings.
Lots of feelings. So this painting that is called the Radeau de la Méduse, or the Raft of the Medusa, was done by Théodore Géricault. It was painted in 1818 when Géricault was just 27 years old. It depicts the story of the French ship Medusa, which was a 40-gun frigate that was used during the Napoleonic Wars in 1810. On June 17th, 1816, the Medusa left the port of Aix alongside three other ships in the fleet, the Loire, Argus, and Echo. The Medusa captain was a gentleman named Victor Hughes de Chaumonray. He decided to make up some time and pass the other ships. He was a very novice captain. He hadn't even been on a ship, not even about steering a ship, but he hadn't even been on a ship in over 20 years. But he was chosen by Louis XVIII because he was very, very dedicated to the Bourbons.
As we all are.
Yeah, as we all are. On the 2nd of July, 1816, the Medusa hit a sandbar because, again, Viscount Hughes, he did not know where he was going. He hit a sandbar off the coast of West Africa at the Banque d'Argonne. It was 80 kilometers off of the coast. Following 3 days of trying to free the Medusa from its captivity in the sand, it was decided that the crew would abandon the ship because a storm came in and started to actually break up the boat. Only 6 small boats were available and would only hold half of its crew, and those were mostly reserved for the elite and the high-ranking officers. And again, this is 1816, so the whole Titanic thing comes afterwards, and you would have thought that maybe we learned from our past mistakes, but no, of course not. We don't. History repeats itself.
Always.
So a raft was quickly built. There was carpenters that were on board, and they just started taking apart anything they could to get the wood to build this raft. It was cool. It held a lot of other heavy things that were on board. They held guns, casks of water, wine, and food tied to the rafts. And they also tied it up to the 6 little boats, but it became really difficult to navigate. And so the captain decided to cut them loose. The captain, of course, was on one of the little boats. The captain, of course, did not go on the raft. When the raft was set free, there was 147 people. 3 of them had already died. So 147 people were on there, and it was like partially submerged because it was a raft. It wasn't exactly created, to be too seaworthy. The worst was to happen with only biscuits, 2 casks of water, and a cask of wine. They were floating under the hot sun, and they got rid of everything but one of those casks. Guess which one?
No idea.
Kept the wine.
Ah,
I mean, they're French, and I would think I would rather, if I'm going to die out at sea by, I'm imagining, Jaws coming to get you. I think I'd rather be drunk than hydrated or full.
Same.
I'm going to go out drunk. As their raft mates died, they had to decide who to eat. So they were eating each other.
Oh.
Ugh. And then some of them and others were just pushed off into the sea. Many men actually dived into the ocean to their deaths because they thought, they just thought, I don't want to die here and be eaten, so I'll just go ahead and kill myself. 13 days later, on July 17th, only 15 of the 150 men were still alive.
Yikes. Oh,
Isn't that
wow.
crazy?
Yeah.
There's 15 of them when the Argus, who was one of their sister ships at the beginning, spotted them. 5 more men died before they reached shore after they were rescued. So only 10 men survived the 2-week ordeal. That following February, the Viscount, the captain, was taken to court. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. This story captured all of France and Europe. And when a story was published in November of 1817, the young Théodore Géricault was drawn into it. The story interviewed 2 of the survivors, a guy named Henry Savigny and Alexander Corriard, recalling their harrowing tales. Géricault was so enthralled, he reached out to the two of them to meet with them. With their help, he began to sketch and even make a scale model of the raft that captured the moments that were just the 2 hours before they were saved. They even served as models for a few of the men in the painting. He was so dedicated to getting every detail correct because the painting includes some people are dead, some people are still alive, some people are in the process of dying. The Géricault would go to the morgue and even brought body parts home from the hospital for him to study how the body decays.
He was super dedicated.
Super grossly dedicated. The survivor, Alexander Corriard, he was an engineer and a journalist, and he published and wrote the eyewitness account of the tragedy. That act had him fired from his job as an engineer, which led him to seek a license. On September 9th, 1818, he opened a bookshop in the Palais Royal. He named his shop the Naufrage de la Méduse, the shipwreck of the Méduse, and people flocked to the store to buy the book and to meet him. The other gentleman, Dr. Henri Savigny, was one of the 3 that volunteered to take the raft. On his arrival in Paris, he testified to the Ministry of the Navy against the captain. When he co-authored the detailed account with Corriard, he found instant fame. One other man that was integral to the raft was a carpenter named Valéry Touchet-Leviette. He was born on April 26, 1789, as we know. He served in his imperial guard for 2 years and was asked to go to Senegal to help to help with the colonization. It was Valerie that helped build and create the raft that they stayed on for the entire voyage. Their eyewitnesses' accounts were the basis of Géricault's early sketches of the painting, two of which you can find in the Louvre. They show a few slight differences from the final version. The first sketch shows the raft position off from the other two. And if you look closely at it, the figures you could see changed a few. And why I love to find these sketches. And when I say sketches, like we think of a sketch as like, you're sitting down with a pencil and drawing on a piece of paper. But in art, a sketch is considered anything. Like it could be a clay model for something Rodin did, or it could be it's a painting with paint. But because it's an early version of the final piece, it's called a sketch. And two of those are in the Louvre, and they're nowhere near the actual final piece of the Raft of the Medusa. But if you book a tour with me, I could show you exactly where they are. When they did this, Géricault had to rent a studio to hold the canvas because it was 16 by 23 feet. It's rather large. His good friend, Eugène Delacroix, paid a visit to the atelier on Rue Saint-Honoré, and after he saw the piece, he ran home through the streets. He was amazed and was screaming because he just could not believe how fantastic this was. And that's when he also decided he was going to paint something as well, and that would be Liberty Leading the People, which you could see his influence on it. The large painting perfectly captures the fear and urgency of the effort to survive. When you look at it, it brings in all sorts of emotion. On the lower left side, the older man is draped in a red cloth. He holds his dead son's body at the edge of the raft with a look of total sadness and despair. In the foreground, the men look to be barely holding on to life in the raft and ready to be swept into sea from the high waves that's off in the distance. Géricault added 20 figures when in truth at this time there was only 15 people historically on the raft. But if you look at the man in the bottom right hand corner that is his face down, his arm outstretched over a log, that's actually Delacroix.
I love that he's in the painting.
Most people think that Delacroix or Géricault is actually in Liberty Leading the People, but it's not the case. It's the other way around.
Interesting.
I
That's
love
something
it.
else we have to look for.
Yeah, in the center of the painting, the men have discovered a boat and are pointing off to it in the distance. At the top of this pyramid, the pyramid shape that is very classic art, is a model. It is a black model. And many years ago at the Orsay, they did this fantastic exhibition called the Black Model. And they were able to take all of these famous paintings like Manet's Olympia and the one of the black model that's just called the Black Model that's in the Louvre that we know now as Madeleine. This is another painting that they did research on, and that model that's at the very top holding the red scarf was a Haitian dancer named Joseph. He was a favorite of Delacroix, and he painted him, or not, sorry, Delacroix, Géricault. He painted him many times. There's a painting of him that they have at the LA Museum that was at the Orsay. I think that exhibit, I want to say, was like 2017. It was quite a long time ago, but it was really fantastic, and it gave a name to all of these people that they were never given names in any of the paintings or in any of the notes. He raises his red scarf up into the sky. He also, with the two gentlemen that are reaching out, those are both of the survivors that he had interviewed. On August 25th, 1819, the Raft of the Medusa was presented at the Salon under the name The Scene of the Shipwreck, winning the gold medal, but being left without a buyer. It was deemed a failure. The painting returned to Géricault's studio until the next year when he paid 20,000 francs to bring it to London and to the Egyptian Hall of Picardy. Then it was on to Dublin in 1821. The Louvre, on the behalf of the general director, Count Auguste de Forbin, purchased the painting on November 12th, 1824 for 6,000 francs, and since then it is hung in the Louvre. It was sadly 10 months after Géricault died in 1859. The Louvre ordered a copy of it that you can also see in Amiens at the Picardy Museum. Pierre Désiré Guimont was the one who created that copy. One thing about the painting that I love, and if people remember when we talked about how they saved the Louvre, the art of the Louvre, This is one that's really a special story. Géricault used a substance that he called bitumen that you add to the paint that makes the browns and the blacks very, very dark. But the problem with bitumen is it never fully dries, and the painting could not be rolled up when they wanted to evacuate it from the Louvre because it would stick to itself. So during the evacuation on September 3rd, 1939, the large canvas traveled through Versailles on a truck. Basically, they took it out of the frame but left it on its stretcher. They put it on a scenery truck borrowed from the Comédie Française across the street and drove through Versailles. They knew along the path where all of the power lines were, but they forgot when they got to Versailles about the trolley line. And so as this truck went through, it hit the power lines of the trolley, and sparks and fire were everywhere. It shoved the truck 10 feet to the side, and it knocked out all of the power to the entire city. And everybody there was panicked because they thought, that's it. The Germans are here. We're going to die.
Oh, wow.
And it was
Um,
really just because of the painting.
I mean, this painting is pretty gruesome and tragic, so it makes sense that it would add to more tragic things.
Yeah, exactly. It stayed in Versailles for about 6 months until they could figure out how to get it down to the Chateau de Chambord. It returned in 1945, and it was hung on the first floor of the Denon wing in the Red Room of the Salle Mollien, which is just a few steps away from the Mona Lisa. And right alongside that, just down the wall, is Delacroix. Right now, Liberty Leading People is being restored, but it's supposed to be back before the Olympics. But this painting is amazing. It is dark. I mean, it's dark in its subject matter, but it's just dark. It's a lot of browns and blacks. And they actually, because he used that bitumen in there, they cannot scientifically restore this painting. It cannot be restored because they can't remove that, because if they try to remove it, it could just ruin the whole painting. And so hopefully it doesn't, these paintings, because they cover it with varnish, they do keep getting darker over time. Théodore Géricault wouldn't live much longer after he painted the masterpiece. He died at 32 years old on January 26, 1824. You could visit his tomb in the Père Lachaise and find a bronze bas-relief of the raft done in front of his tomb by Antoine Etec. But you'll notice there's one little difference. So the one where the father is holding onto his dead son, he's naked in the painting. But when they did this for the bas-relief in bronze, in a much smaller version, they covered up his naughty bits.
I wonder why.
I know, it's pretty hilarious. But the tomb is really cool because he's Géricault is laying on top of it, holding his palette. Below him is the Raft of the Medusa, and on the sides are two other paintings that he had done that are done in bronze. But the painting is really neat. When I take people there, sometimes I say, what does it make you feel? Because if you look at the top of the painting, it's kind of very optimistic, and he's, Joseph's up there, and like, we're here, save us. And if you look at the bottom, and that both of the things have red. So he's holding a red scarf, and the father down below is wrapped in kind of a red scarf around his head. And both of those things are kind of what get your attention, because it's the only color that's not brown or black in the painting. And he just looks sad and depressed. So it's very much which do you see and what do you take from the painting? It's pretty amazing, even with its kind of, maybe don't think about the fact that they were eating each other.
I mean, the whole story is just so tragic because they had the lifeboats and they just cut them. They're like, here you go. Like,
well, they wouldn't have fit in there. There was way too many people to fit in 6 small boats. But it is kind of, it is interesting because the very elite and the high-ranking officers are like, no, we don't want you, no, you guys could figure out this on your own. And then they cut them loose, like, you're slowing us down. See you later.
yeah, that's very sad, but not surprising.
Not surprising, but it's an amazing, amazing piece. The Géricault, there's another room that's up on the second floor of the Sully wing that also is dedicated to him. And, most everybody knows if they know Géricault, they know the Raft of the Medusa, but he'd love to paint paintings of horses. And so the room that is dedicated to him has a lot of his horse paintings, and they're really spectacular.
I think what's really interesting about a lot of the art we talk about is the fact that it was so hated or controversial at the time. and now it's like treasured, and you just have to think about that even in today's standards, like when people are making new art, like do people hate it and will it be loved one day? I mean, everything felt so controversial back then.
Yeah, and when you talk about, like we've talked about, like Manet with Déjeuner sur l'herbe, when we talked about Victorine, who was a model for that, and also for Olympia, and that was so shocking. And it's before I've said, like, oh, people would they just were freaked out about everything back then, but it's not any different today. It might be worse.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Things
It
don't
is.
change, but they
Yeah.
do.
And it's art. Art is supposed to be thought provoking, and get reactions out of people. And what I love is not what somebody else loves. Like, I'm not a contemporary art fan really at all. I have a very small amount of contemporary art pieces that I like. I like the older things, but then there's people that are like, they don't like anything in the Louvre. They only want to see impressionists. So we all, I mean, that's what makes it great, is that everybody has the things that they love. But it is funny that art can also get some pretty visceral reactions from people.
Yeah, definitely. Well, guys, head on over to ClaudineHemingway.com to learn more, hire her for a tour when you're in town, and tune in next week.
Thanks for listening today, guys. If you're interested in learning more about Claudine, her tours, history, and the beautiful photographs that she posts all over Instagram, tune into her website, ClaudineHemingway.com.